Vice President of Metro Hartford Alliance and Executive Director of the Connecticut Insurance and Financial Services. The CTIFS Board of Directors companies recognizes how important it is to connect with you, our future talent. And we thank Commissioner Mason and his entire team for allowing you to reach in and gain an understanding of where the IFS industry is going and what those jobs may be for the future. When you think of insurance and financial services careers, underwriting, risk mitigation, building actuarial models may come to mind, and that's good. There are thousands of employees who make that their daily work. But today's ability to manipulate a spreadsheet is as vital as knowing about social determinants. Communication is key and is as critical as working with a team. The many IFS companies here in Connecticut are leading the charge on data science, AI, IoT, blockchain, and machine learning. These are all norms. They are creating sustainable environments for the world, investing millions of dollars in innovation and technologies like cybersecurity, and helping all of us live healthier lives, both in terms of wellness, well-being, and financial wellness. This forum in the next 2 days will showcase how these new jobs are part of the fabric of Connecticut's IFS industries, with an open invitation for you to join us, and we hope that you do. Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome to the Entrepreneur InsurTech panel. I'm Stacy Brown. I'm just a local insurance IT guy that's been doing this for the last 20 years. And I also founded an organization a few years ago called InsurTech Hartford. And InsurTech Hartford does a number of things, but one of the things that we do is to help entrepreneurs and innovators bring their products to market and grow their businesses. So I'm happy and excited to be able to be here today to maybe help you understand the opportunities that are available in insurance and InsurTech, and also to understand, what others are seeing in it. So, but before we jump into the discussion panel, I thought to just make sure you have a good understanding of what is InsurTech. So, InsurTech, as simple as is applying technology, modern technology, to change the insurance industry and to make it better. And so this can happen in many ways. We see examples of it where, let's say you have to integrate an insurance companies' solutions to a travel website so that they can sell travel insurance, right? So that's all technology on the back end that enables that little button click that you see on the page to happen. Other things that could be is the automation of processes, right? And natural language processing of documents to stream in data to go through processes of underwriting, etc. And then data itself. There is so much data. Insurance is one of the largest industries around data. We produce a lot of data and we consume a ton of data. And there are new data sets coming to market all the time. There are new tools and new techniques for analyzing and working with that data. And so when it comes to InsurTech, the opportunities are pretty much endless for what we can do out there. And the entrepreneurship side of it has actually been helping drive the changes in adoption of the technology more rapidly. Because venture capitalists have started to put money behind these startup companies. There's been billions of dollars that's gone into InsurTech over the last 5 years or so. And we're lucky to be here in Hartford, where we have such a rich ecosystem, access to basically any type of resources that you could possibly need to build an InsurTech business. So anyway, enough for me. I'm glad that you're here today, and we're going to hear from some other local folks who are on their path to having successful insurance and InsurTech careers. And to take us through a discussion panel today, I'd like to introduce Laura Dinan-Haber. Laura is the Innovation Program Manager at Nassau Financial Group, and she's also a graduate from University of Hartford.
Thank you, Stacy, for that warm welcome, and welcome to the InsurTech Entrepreneurship Panel, part of the Next Gen Career Academy. My name is Laura Dinan-Haber. I'm the Innovation Program Manager for Nassau Financial's Group InsurTech Incubator, Nassau Reimagine, and the moderator for today's conversation. I'm a graduate of the University of Hartford, and while I find myself in the amazing insurance career, the industry was not on my radar when graduating college. My path getting here has included opportunities in economic development, community relations, and investor relations. And I'm joined here today by 3 recent UConn grads, each with diverse backgrounds and unique stories, how they found themselves in the insurance industry, and more specifically, within InsurTech. For those of you unfamiliar with the term InsurTech, think of it as the intersection between insurance and technology, where both come together to make a positive change in industry improvements. Now, if I were to ask the audience to describe the industry, if we were in person here today, I would not be surprised if someone raised their hand and said, insurance moves at the speed of insurance. And I think for those who have been in the industry, even for a day, you'll know that that might not be as quick as what other industries are used to. And you may think that it takes decades of experience to break in to be able to make these changes. But hopefully our discussion today will give additional insight into how fast insurance can actually move and what kind of diverse backgrounds individuals can have to really make change and implement within the insurance and InsurTech space. So we're here to say that's not the case, that we're going to enter into this conversation through the lens of entrepreneurship. And we're going to show just how interesting this industry is and why it's such a great opportunity for individuals such as yourself to consider it as you're either going into, graduation phase, or if you're already within the graduation space and are looking to kind of realign yourself with a new opportunity. Insurance definitely has something to offer for everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce our panel today. Joining us, we have Eli Umaya, a legal AI analyst for Infinalytics, UConn grad of 2021. We have Ashish Mohan, lead data science for Cover Financial Technologies of UConn 2020, and Scott Kwan, platform advisory analyst at Accenture, UConn 21. So let's dive into today's conversation. Ellie, I would like to start with you. You have a very interesting background, as I'm sure the audience has seen on the write-up provided on the landing page. But I want to focus on your background within insurance law. And I want to know, how did you find yourself working with Infinalytics? And what was it that attracted you to working with a startup?
Thank you, Laura, for the introductions. And just as you've mentioned, my background is quite interesting. And I got myself into InsurTech, 1, out of curiosity, and 2, because of my previous background. I had worked with startups previously, so this was kind of like familiar ground to me. And I wanted to just know what is this new thing that is coming into the insurance space, and how is it going to change the dynamics of how insurance works?
And that's amazing. And so curiosity obviously helped get you here, as I'm sure that we'll hear from the additional panelists as well. But it just goes to show, again, it's, you have a law background, you can come from many different places, many different experiences, and find yourself really making improvements in the industry. So Ashish, let's talk a little bit about, your background, environmental engineering, urban planning, and yet here you are with data science. So can you share with the group what interests you about the insurance industry?
Thanks, Laura, for such a warm welcome. So, my story is a bit different. I had 4 years work experience in consulting before moving into the insurance. And then I joined UConn for a very specific purpose, for a career in finance and analytics. But something really interesting happened in my second year. I got introduced to InsurTech program, which is run at UConn. And that's how I know, okay, so this is one field where I can leverage all my prior knowledge and at the same time use analytics towards it. So that's how I came to know about Cover, and Cover when I joined, before everyone else, for the recent college graduate used to be whoa, insurance is really boring. But when I look at the data and everything, which as a data scientist, which we can do, I was like, well, this is a place to work for, because it's so new and we're using so much analytics towards it. You can explore every options of data science in the insurance sector.
Yeah, and it's a term that we hear a lot, right? So it's going through and selecting what focus areas within colleges or universities. Data science is something that's extremely important, and it can be used in many different ways. So thank you for sharing your background on that piece of it, and we'll dive more in a little bit. Now, Scott, your background, you've had both corporate and startup experience. So do you mind sharing a little bit of the key differences or maybe some unexpected similarities between the two environments?
For starters, I'd say one of the key differentiating factors is obviously, a lot of people talk about it, is speed. From the start of a project to the end of a project, it just feels much more different than a corporate setting. When I went to Cover, or worked for Cover for a little bit, we were always moving, or everyone around me was always moving, getting on to the next thing, constantly. It was fast. And I think I can't overstate that enough. And then when I went and transitioned into Accenture, although they are at the same level innovative, just as bright, just as excited to do their work as the people at Cover, it is a little bit slower. Things might progress not as fast as you would expect from a startup or a smaller, leaner company. But yeah, that's mainly what it is.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. So where I find myself working with the incubator, I have corporate on one end and I have the entrepreneurs on another. So it's interesting watching. It's kind of like a summer thunderstorm coming together, where you have the warm air and the cold air, and they're different, yet together they make something beautiful. So speed is definitely something that is talked about a lot. And I think from what we've heard so far, you do your best to adapt to these things and not to be afraid of them, right? So utilizing existing experiences, utilizing, thought processes, if it's the data science or, the technicalities behind it, it's really an opportunity to kind of combine these things to have a sense of where we can land. Ellie, let's flip the conversation a little bit. I know in our audience today, we have individuals who are interested in potentially getting into the insurance industry or the insurtech space specifically. What are some pieces of advice that you would give to students or recent graduates considering the entrepreneurial or insurtech path?
So what I would say is that this is for me, it has been an interesting journey. It has been a dynamic journey. And insurance and also just insurtech, if I could just encompass them together, one way or another touches everyone's lives. So if you're looking at the insurance field and you're looking to get a career out of it, there's quite a vast array of careers that you can do. That's from being an investigator or a field adjuster or an underwriter. There's just quite much you can do, and there's quite much that you can find that fits with what probably you're interested in. For example, myself, I found that with my legal background and knowledge in insurance, I was able to be a key individual working for Infinalytics. And just that understanding, that knowledge of insurance has just opened this door for me that I never imagined. When I was coming to the US from Kenya, I never imagined that this door would be opened. And so far, it's been quite a fulfilling journey. And I would encourage students who are looking to getting into insurance to just dive into it. It's quite interesting. It's quite broad. There's a lot that you can do.
That's great. And it's interesting. So you had mentioned, you have an international background and coming to, not only the U.S. but also into different fields. I think that it's good for people to understand that there's no one place or no one major or no one minor that really defines these opportunities. I know myself, I attended the business school at University of Hartford. I graduated with a marketing degree. So my path, if you were to ask me however many years ago that was, it would have been very different than where I find myself today. And I'd be curious, Ashish, did you plan to find yourself in this industry, or is this something that you naturally came across, or were you introduced by somebody in particular? How did you find your way here?
Yeah, so there is also an interesting story towards it. Like if you would have asked that question, like will I be working in an insurance agency like 2 years back? My answer would be hell no. Like I have no idea about what insurance is.
Sure.
Like before joining Cover, I literally had zero knowledge about the insurance industry. So yeah, it's okay to not to have knowledge about a sector, but you can just, if you want to learn, just get into it and then you learn on the go. So my story was a bit different. Like I had a really good interaction with our CEO, Mike Kellen. Mm-hmm. And when he explained to me okay, how this entire industry works, that's how I got slowly interested toward the sector. And I was like, well, let's try it out. So when I joined Cover, it was more about on a basis of a trial period. Not was this is something I really wanted to make a career in the insurance industry. Imagine me coming from an urban planning background with an environmental planning background, have worked 4 years in consulting sector in India, in Norway, or in Uganda, and then coming back to a next job as a data scientist in an insurance firm. From the outside of it, it looks boring, but it's not.
And, you bring up a really good point. So you mentioned Mike Kalen, and Mike is an individual who is very well known throughout the Hartford insurance sector in general, but his reach is far wider than that. Would you say that, was it the background or was it a person that got you, interested in this field? So for myself, Susan Winkler, she's executive director and vice president of Connecticut Insurance and Financial Services. Susan has been an amazing mentor for me for years. And without her, I don't think that my interest would be the same. So Scott, from your perspective, did you have an individual help guide you down this path, or did you find it differently?
So for me, I'd say I pretty much came into this with no knowledge, or no one really kind of pushed me to pursue insurance or go into insurance. In particular, even participate in the CCEI InsurTech initiative with Eleanor and others. But I just did it to kind of feed my curiosity. I feel like being or growing up in the Hartford area or Connecticut, you can't help but note that it is the InsurTech, or the insurance capital of the world. There are a lot of insurance companies here. and then learning about it, hearing about it, you can't help but wonder what it is actually like to be in insurance. I think that is mainly what attracted me to this, or to insurance opportunities, and why I ended up kind of at Cover through the initiative. So yeah.
And thinking about that, what are some ways? It'd be interesting to hear from each of you. What are some ways that you think the industry, so the insurance industry, whether it's corporate, whether it's additional sectors, membership organizations, et cetera, what are some ways the industry can help support newer recent graduates or people who are still within the collegiate spectrum wondering, where do I go after I graduate? Because we talk a lot about, tell us advice, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I want to know, what can the industry do to help support or help foster this interest earlier in the conversation? And I know that at certain universities and schools, there are programs like UConn CCEI in partnership with the University of Hartford. And there's, people behind the scenes making these things happen, which is an asset to the entire community. But what else can we do? Are we overlooking, are there simple things? Are there more complex things? What could we do as an industry to help garner this interest sooner in the conversation instead of just junior and senior year? Ellie, let's begin with you.
I think I would say probably have more of introductory topics into insurance, just maybe holding seminars and making it open to all students to just know about the industry, bring industry experts to talk to students and let them know what is happening in the insurance industry and what are these cool careers that they can join into the industry. Another thing that probably is being done and maybe might be fostered a little bit more is internship programs. I really appreciate that at UConn Law and also for the CCI program, I was able to have 2 internships running concurrently. So I was able to work with the Connecticut Insurance Department and also work with Infinilytics. And at the end of it all, you could be able to say, okay, I think I'm interested in working in this area, and you would go by it. So that would make someone at least have some kind of understanding and see before they get to that path where they have to choose where they want to go into.
And Ashish, what are your thoughts?
So it's like definitely industry needs to a bit more exposure to the recent grads, like in terms of the internship which Eleanor just suggested. But what I feel like every business, even insurance, has like the same set of like business processes, whether it's like operations or it's sales or it's like marketing or it's like finance, which many recent graduates are not aware of. Like I just recall like one of my experiences, like which I had during my grad program. Many people thought like in insurance, it's all about sales, but things goes much more beyond that. So we need some leading industry experts come visiting the college and telling them about all the businesses process which happens within the insurance industry. Like right now, before joining, like for example, my sake, like for insurance, I always used to think of in terms of like health insurance. I was not even aware of, hey, there's a career in like even life insurance as well. There's a career, in fact, in term insurance as well. So if at the early age, like let's say in the first year of a grad program or like second or third year of an undergrad program, if we have some leading industry experts coming to it and letting them know about these different aspects of an insurance sector, that will definitely help.
And Scott, what are your thoughts as well?
So I completely agree with Ashish and what Ellie have said. I mean, just looking at us, looking at our backgrounds, hearing about where we've come from, I mean, it's obvious that we're coming from different backgrounds, different interests. And to kind of appeal to those interests, I think, or the wide variety of interests of college students or recent grads, is something that I mean, it would probably be difficult, but it would be something of an advantage for insurance, because I feel like there is so much that you can do in insurance. Even looking at what we've done here among us in insurance, I at Cover was a research analyst, basically helping them build relationships with others in a marketing and sales role. I feel like even with that, you could reach out to marketing students or people interested in sales or people that would like to go into that industry, but are not sure if insurance offers those same kind of opportunities. I think a lot of people, when they think about insurance, they think about insurance, but they fail to recognize that it is a much more complicated and diverse field than they give it credit for. So, yeah.
I love it. Oh, go ahead, Ashish.
Yeah, just to add into the Scott response, like, for example, me and my team at the Cover, we are doing analytics across the operations sector, marketing, then even sales and the finance as well. So it's like you can see we are tackling like 4 different business streams within that segment itself. So yeah, so these kind of knowledge has to be like given to like recent grads or like the current students so that they were aware of like, okay, yeah, the career is like provides much more scope and much more width rather than a narrowed career track.
And just to add on to what Ashish and Scott have said, and also Laura, I think just to sum it up, I think InsurTech teams succeed with multidisciplinary backgrounds. So each of us have different backgrounds that we've come from, and then merging it with InsurTech, I think that just gives it, just puts the ice on it and makes the team get to where it wants to be.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting. And I love what Scott said, that when people think about insurance, they only think about insurance. And there's a lot of truth to that, I think, for some individuals who may not have the same level of exposure of the different types of roles and the backgrounds and the opportunities within the industry. And it's interesting because, you know, there is a marketing element. A lot of it is customer relations. It is, you know, the soft skills that are really very important in helping to either make a sale, make a deal, you know, create client interactions, et cetera. And then you have the importance of the hard skills, you know, actuaries. Wow. That's a field not for the faint of heart, but there's, you know, it's important from a numbers perspective in the same way that's important from a handshake perspective, that we have both the soft and the hard skills in order for the industry and InsurTech specifically to really be able to move forward and make difference in really impactful ways. So I thank you for, you know, providing additional insight into what the industry can do to help, you know, garner interest sooner instead of making it feel like either, you know, the conversation begins only when an internship opportunity comes up or only in certain times or places, but to really begin the conversation sooner, I think is a really great way for us to begin supporting. So a little bit of, you know, advice has been sprinkled throughout, but I really want to focus more on that. And for those, you know, in the audience who, again, are interested in potentially a new career or a career change to insurance, what are some pieces of advice that you have for these individuals? What are some things that you wish you could have told yourself, you know, 2, 4, 5 years ago? And Ellie, let's begin with you.
So what I would just say is that when you join a particular company, whether it's a startup or whether it's an already established corporate, at whatever job you do it to your best level, no matter how small you think that the tasks you're being given are. And again, also just respect everyone that is within the company. Another thing is just to look at the job description that you have and every day strive to understand and just know what you need to do to fulfill those aspects of your job description. Again, when you get into the insurance field, I think in whatever category you get into, there's always training for employees. So whatever level you get into, there'll always be training, and then you find yourself upping your skills, and eventually it's quite common for people to move from one company to the other. And you find that you'll have different skills that you'd have acquired over time. And this will be beneficial to you even as you end through your career. You can be a consultant in the insurance field.
That's great. Ashish, how about yourself?
Yeah, so one thing I would like to say, someone who is having interest in this sector is like first try to read about or gather more overview of the industry. If it's okay not to have any knowledge of an insurance sector before even applying for a job, but hey, your prior experience or prior knowledge, some element like from there, some elements to it like which you can really relate to any job within the insurance sector you want to apply for. And then once you are in that organization, so the really like good willingness to learn every aspect, and you learn on the go. Like try to learn from your colleagues, from peers, or like Eleanor said, like respect your colleague and your peers and learn from their experience. And like things keeps moving, like skill sets doesn't remains the same. Like all the hard skill sets which is relevant now for an sector will not be there for after 1 year or after 2 years, but you have to show the willingness to learn new things and then try it out.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's something that we've heard a lot in our conversation today. And I know that in my own personal background, it's true. I noted the industries or the areas that I've had experiences in the past. And really, it's about the individual being able to hone what skills do I have? How can I apply them to where I want to be? What is of value and how can I exceed and continue to upskill myself to bring additional value to not only the organization, but to the industry as whole. And it's a mindset. And I think that it's exciting, and it's exciting to have heard from you each today to hear your stories and to really get a sense of we can come from anywhere and everywhere with all sorts of backgrounds and be able to break into insurance. So we are at the end of our time here for our panel discussion, but I want to really thank you, Ellie, Ashish, and Scott, for sharing your insight and advice with our audience today. It's been an honor to spend this time learning from you and learning with you. And I'd like to just point out, for those of you who have attended and hopefully have had a listening ear, you've probably noticed some reoccurring threads in our conversation. So it's, the desire to learn, it's utilizing transferable skills, acquiring new skills, and really understanding how you can bring your best self to the table and your best self to the industry. So again, thank you all very much for attending this panel discussion. Please, if you have any questions, reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have or interact and make new connections into the field. So thank you again, and thank you to the Department of Insurance for this wonderful opportunity.
Next, we have the broker and consultant panel moderated by Michelle Zuda.
Thanks, Lady. I would like to again welcome everyone to the Next Gen Career Academy panel discussion on brokers and consulting houses. I am Michelle Duda, Senior Audit Manager in the insurance practice at Crowe LLP here in West Hartford, Connecticut, and I will be your moderator today. We have a great panel joining us today, but before I introduce those individuals, I wanted to note that if there are any questions from the attendees, there is a chat function that's being monitored. So please feel free to address those there, and we will address them if there's time at the end of the discussion. Joining us today, we have some very experienced brokers and consultants, Jay Sheehan, Rocco Mancini, and Shelley Sweat. Jay, can you please take a few moments to introduce yourself and give everyone a little insight on what you do and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. My name is Jay Sheehan. I work for Aon. I'm a senior account executive, which doesn't speak to my age and gray hair. Anyhow, what I do is I'm a relationship manager for Aon, and I am I marshal the resources basically for Aon or that reside within Aon for the client's benefit. Because what you end up having at larger brokers is a large swath of services that are provided, and it would be next to impossible for an insured or client to navigate those. I've been doing this in some capacity, serving as a broker for about 25 years. I started out as a line broker doing tax liability, rep and warranty, and contingent liability placements, morphed into the private equity world, and started doing work on PE firms and their portfolio companies. Ran management liability practice groups for Integro, for Epic, and for Marsh, and then cyber practice group for Integro. And now I find myself in this iteration, which is really just the relationship manager. And all of my background in insurance kind of serves to help insureds understand what they're going through, not only in the market, but also with structuring of their insurance programs. Long-winded way of saying I've done a lot of things. The nice part about insurance is you get to move from job or responsibility or obligation to the next as you get that experience, and as to what interests you.
Perfect. Thanks. Next, I would like to introduce Rocco Mancini. Rocco, can you take a few minutes to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Rocco Mancini. I'm a vice president in Marsh Captive Solutions Captive Advisory Group. Basically, what I do is I work with clients who are looking to determine if it's feasible for them to form their own insurance company as a means to strategically finance their risks with a formally regulated insurance company that they wholly own. I started off my career actually looking at the captive insurance. I originally interned at the Connecticut Insurance Department in their captive division, moving over to MetLife, where I worked in their multinational pooling and captive division, and now where I sit in my current role with Marsh Captive Solutions today. So I've been working in the field of captive solutions since I graduated from college. I'm 29 years old. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now, and it's been just cool experience taking a unique path into the insurance industry and kind of building a unique career from there.
Awesome. Thanks. Finally, I'd like to introduce Shelley Sweat. Shelley, can you also take a few minutes to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Shelley Sweat. I work for TR Paul in Newtown, Connecticut. We are brokers and employee benefits consultants, and I work primarily with small to mid-sized businesses in the state of Connecticut, helping them be basically the best procurers of a very expensive benefit as they can be. So we try to help them make the right solutions about the benefits for their employees and help utilize that benefit that they're purchasing as best as they can. By way of background, I'm an attorney. I worked for a while in mergers and acquisitions, so just big transactions, rather boring. And I came to the benefits world after which, and I think Jay made this point that it's ever changing. So it's a dynamic business. Even if you don't switch roles, the role that you have in terms of the rules you have to follow are always changing. And what we do is make sure our employers are on the right glide path so that they have what they need in order to fulfill the needs of their employees.
Thanks, Charlie. So I kind of think going off of that, I think a lot of the attendees today are new grads, people just starting out in their career. Jay, can you give some insight on why you think the insurance industry is a great industry to work in?
I don't think I ever said that.
Redact that.
No, it is. So here's how most people end up falling into insurance, and then I'll kind of answer the question more directly. More often than not, it's just by happenstance. My kind of backstory is I was doing backroom reconciliations for mutual funds at State Street Bank, which is as boring as it sounds. My father happened to be getting his MBA at UConn, and the guy that was sitting next to him worked for Marsh. Had mentioned that they needed some young people. I went in, had a couple interviews, and within like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I had a job in insurance. I did it for about 4 years. I was in their commercial casualty department at Stanford.
I wouldn't be in a position where I would be today, where, like I said, I have that autonomy, I have that freedom. I'm able to, it's a really funny experience going into a room where, I'm the youngest person by about 20 years, and everyone's looking at me as the subject matter expert. And there's lots of niches and areas in the insurance industry where you can find that. And once you even find one, you're not locked to it. I'm also within Marsh, a subject matter expert in things in emerging technologies, digital asset risk transfer. I'm an expert in working with any of our clients that handle anything like cryptocurrencies, emerging that and the risk retention there. And there's continuously new and emerging opportunities in the insurance industry, where even if you find yourself in a niche at the beginning to create your own career path, there's so many other areas of interest that you could expand. So it's something where I do think is only possible in a lot of industries where you don't see people actively looking towards today. And choosing to have a career in the insurance industry can give you a lot of freedom, a lot of autonomy, and without giving up that work-life balance, as Jay mentioned, which I can stress, I can't stress enough. Just thinking out of college, it's something I thought I didn't care about. Just a couple of years out of college, that's huge. It's very easy to underestimate that work-life balance aspect.
Yeah, I would just add to that one of the things I think that's unique about the insurance industry is that on the entrepreneurial spectrum, you can do anything from hang out a shingle yourself to have a full corporate career and any mix in between with really just the base level of certification. And then you can take that career wherever you want to take it, right? And I think that Rocco's a good example of that with all those sort of subject area expertises. He's not pigeonholed into doing one thing for the rest of his life. He can really chart his own path.
Here's another interesting thing about where we are as an industry. It's an older industry, if you will, by terms of employees. So within the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be an incredible amount of opportunity to take on additional responsibility and to grow in your career. And that is, at least to me, that's exciting because there's a whole host of opportunities that'll be available to you that wouldn't be otherwise.
Thanks for that great dialogue. One thing that I found to be very important in my career is the importance of networking, building relationships, and building your own personal brand. Rocco, would you be able to talk a little bit how this has played a role in your career? Sure. And, it's funny that I wound up in this industry as kind of a means of building my own personal brand. And it started in college. I actually was a healthcare management major. And at the time I was at the University of Connecticut, they didn't have a risk management degree yet. So I went there as it was one of the only courses where it closely aligned with taking insurance courses, in addition to the other work that was there. And one of the things that stuck out to my professors, and, it's kind of a way of building my own personal brand, was that I would come up to them afterwards and ask them questions and actually try to understand some of the things that other people weren't looking at. And it's a funny thing in that, just being able, one of the easiest ways in college when you're younger, I found, to build your personal brand and to network is that there are plenty of people in the insurance industry, like everyone in this panel, that if you come up to them, ask questions about the industry and try to understand it and show that you're inquisitive about it, it's such an easy way to network with these people because, I don't know if I can speak to everyone else on this panel, but my experience is it'd be very, very rare for someone to come up to me and actually want to talk to me about insurance. But
showing even that little bit of initiative in somewhere where it's so rare is a great way to build up your personal brand. It's really what helped to get me where I was today was when no one else was looking at the insurance industry, I was asking these questions and talking and networking with people who are already in the industry. And I don't think I've met one person in the industry who wasn't willing to answer those questions and talk to me more. And it's amazing. And that's one of the easiest ways to network and build your personal brand in the insurance industry, and seeing that someone, who's reputable, who wants to be in the industry and who people could depend upon, is simply being, willing to ask those questions, willing to admit when you don't understand something and grow from it, understanding that, you're going to make mistakes, but as long as you own up to it and you want to actively work with the people in the industry, you want to talk to people and you show some interest, that puts you leagues ahead of, a lot of other people in the industry, just because, as we mentioned, a lot of people wind up in the insurance industry on happenstance. So to come in and show you're interested and want to learn from the people who are in the industry truly sets you apart. And it's been the way that I attribute to building my own personal brand in the industry and setting myself apart as one of the key aspects. There are plenty more that I'll let Jay and Shelly speak to. But I think that one was the most critical for me, was actually showing that interest, asking those questions, and just showing my willingness to grow in an industry where so many people just aren't looking at.
I would throw in that there's a handful of associations related to the insurance industry. I myself am a member of the National Association of Health Underwriters, and I'm the treasurer for the Connecticut area. But there are so many professionals, and talk about people who are looking to mentor or open to an open dialogue. And it's, got the social element that Jay spoke to, as well as having the subject matter information and educational systems. I think it's a great way to meet other people. I'll also piggyback on what Jay said about the lack of young people. So I know our association and most of the fellow brokers that I work with are all looking to bring some kind of fresh blood to the table so that they can have the continuity to continue in this business.
And new ideas. I mean, we're relatively staid. We need to get, to really look at insurance issues in a different way. And we need that different perspective.
And just piggybacking off of that, I think another important thing for the attendees to understand is what sort of skills you as the panelists find that would kind of help these individuals be successful in their career. Shelly, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Well, one of the things I think is great about insurance is that there's a wide spectrum, right? Depending on what it is that you want to do, right? So there are things that attention to detail and following things closely, where that's a critical skill. Also, a desire to always continue learning, because I think no matter what you choose in terms of a career path in insurance, it's always changing. So you have to be interested and intrigued on learning something new, staying active. I think depending on where you go, people skills is a huge thing when you're dealing with clients, when you're on the golf course. I do play golf, I will say that. So that's 100% accurate. I think that those skills are important too. So honestly, I think there's such a spectrum that I wouldn't be worried about what my major was, or, do I have the skills that really fit? I think that you can take your skills and then find the fit that works with you within the insurance industry.
I would love to add something to that, but that was absolutely perfect. That's really what we're looking for. We can teach you what you need to know. It's just that openness to learning.
And I'm sure all the panelists on right now can probably attest to the fact that you could probably count on your hands the number of people who went to college specifically looking to get into insurance. So
that is true. Although it seems to be more prevalent these days than it was, 10, 15 years ago. And you see it down south. When you go down there, you get a bunch of the SEC schools that are offering risk management degrees. And it's nice because they come in knowing something. But again, that's very few when we have a lot of openings and a lot of opportunities to build a career.
we haven't sold the insurance industry or being a broker or consultant enough yet. Can the panelists speak to what makes your job interesting and why you'd think that attendees should consider a career?
I'll take a whack at that one. And you know, it may be good just for us to give a two-second overview of what we do in a day. I mean, my role, I said, is a relationship manager, but really what I do is I coordinate the insurance placement for my clients. So I use my brokers to go to insurance carriers to get insurance coverage. And that's really what I do on a daily basis. What I find interesting about that is I'm constantly negotiating between my brokers and the insurance carriers and our clients, because I have to figure out what it is that they really want and how to best go to the market and get that. So my day is never the same. I can tell you that my mornings are controllable, but by 12:30, 1 o'clock, my afternoons are spent really trying to address issues that clients confront on a daily basis. And they're different. They're always different, but it's trying to help them navigate their programs and get done what they need to get done so they can move on to the more important things in their day.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Similarly, that my morning is pretty structured, but my afternoon is generally putting out fires, is helping people solve problems. And that's anything from an employee who's having a problem accessing services to an employer that's having problems to a carrier that for whatever reasons can't get something done or needs our assistance in moving the ball. I think what makes it a career that one would want to go into is that you've got that work-life balance, as Jay said. It's very interesting. And when you are able to help people, especially, and I work specifically in employee benefits, and I'm dealing primarily the high ticket item is health insurance, right? So if I'm able to help somebody get something covered, get access to a service that they didn't have, get on a plan when they didn't have a plan, it's incredibly rewarding, right? So it's worth the hard work and the sort of toil to get the problem solved, because at the end result of solving that problem is something related to somebody's healthcare or their well-being. And so it's rewarding. And in terms of it becoming more popular, right, it's all over the news in terms of how do we solve these problems. So I feel like being at the front end of that, being able to at least help an individual gives me the expertise to maybe provide that expertise on up the line in terms of making the solution for the whole. But it's incredibly rewarding. So I think that's what I take from it more. I mean, I was an attorney, right? So I already had the mindset of being in a people helping position. But I think that being able to do that on a daily basis is incredibly rewarding, and it keeps you going to the next day or the next problems that you're going to solve for people.
Yeah, I don't know if I could even begin to describe what a common day looks like for me, because, you know, I've been fortunate enough in the captive insurance industry. What I'm doing every day is I'm helping clients build their own insurance company from the ground up, starting from scratch, starting with the feasibility, and trying to help them understand what are the options. And every day truly winds up being unique, because when you're actually helping a company form a new legal entity in their organization, a new insurance company, what you need to do is you need to work closely with them, understand their organization, and build a very strong relationship with the client very quickly. I'm helping clients build very tailored insurance vehicles and a very tailored solution that's always unique to them. And one of the most challenging, but also the most rewarding thing about my day to day is that not only do I not have any 2 days that look similar, but it's very rare for me to encounter the same problem twice. Even when I work with two very similar clients, a little nuance between both of them means that there are certainly similarities, but those differences often wind up being critical. So it's something where, not a single day in my career has been really routine, and that's something that's always unique and interesting to me. And what really makes me happy in the industry is just to be able to go in and do unique work directly with clients. No two clients are the same. No two projects I have are the same. And I can't stress that enough. That's what really makes the work I do rewarding, is that it's not boring. And that's actually the secret where I find to just being happier in general, is that when you have less routine, you have less of your brain being on autopilot all the time. You get to think more critically. You get to be more involved. You get to have new experiences, and it just makes the day-to-day more rewarding, and it just makes it feel like you're actually contributing a lot more than, if you're just in a position where you could do the same thing, day after day.
And don't forget that the one thing that we haven't touched upon is these skills are transferable. So I could be working in Hartford today and decide, you know what, I feel like moving up to San Francisco, LA, Dallas, and that is absolutely available to you, is the ability to move as your life grows and changes. You're not stuck in a single city. There is, I would say, I'm pretty sure that Aon has an office in every state, certainly multiple offices in a couple, but I believe we're in every state at this point. So if you need to, if you want to move, if you want to experience something different, you have that available to you.
And I'm going to add one more thing on top of that. And the nice thing about it is because those skills are so transferable, if at the end of the day you feel the insurance industry isn't for you, you don't lose something by just being in it for a couple of years. Client management skills and some of the sales skills that go into it are transferable to so many different industries. And there's so many different areas of insurance, and insurance touches so many different industries that you could easily transfer to some of those or find an niche in the insurance industry and kind of go back and forth between, am I going to be in insurance today with a focus on this, providing insurance products for X, Y, and Z industries? Well, maybe I want to go directly into those industries with my knowledge and the sales skills and the client management skills that I have. So it leaves you with a lot of options. Just because you're in insurance today doesn't mean that you're going to be in insurance for the rest of your career, but you certainly can be, and it certainly would be a great path as well. But having options, especially when you're young, always feels great.
I think another thing that would be beneficial to the attendees is maybe for each of you to give a little understanding, insight into what opportunities are available at your organizations for new hires, for recent grads.
We actually have Aon has a very, as most large brokers do, a very prescribed way of entering our ranks. You kind of start with an internship, and that leads to, and I'm not going to know all these programs, but there's the what the heck's it called? It's like Kickstart or something like that. What it is we get recent grads in, and we teach them insurance. So it's a year-long program. They're actually embedded within a group and do real work, but at the same time, the expectation is that they're studying to pass their insurance exam, which is not difficult. Anybody can do it if I can. So don't let that in any way dissuade you from doing it. But we give you the knowledge that you need. And then you start working, but you have, you kind of have that backstop of having more seasoned people around you, so that when you do make a mistake, and we all do, doesn't matter, we'll take care of it. But it starts to give you that experience pretty quickly, so that you feel part of a team and that you start getting into the industry, networking, all the other things that you need to do when you start working. But it's in a very, lack of a better word, safe way. You're not just set adrift.
And I think I want to stress something that Shelly said earlier, that I know that, Marsh and a lot of the large brokerage firms, a lot of large consulting firms, they're always going to be looking for fresh talent at some of these association groups and at conferences and things like that where they're participating. Just networking with the people there can make, open up opportunities where it may not be, sometimes there's opportunities outside the prescribed path. My career path was I interned at the Connecticut Insurance Department. I applied out of college. I applied for a job at MetLife where they wanted 3 years of experience, but because I have captive insurance knowledge, they made it a less senior position for me to come in doing a similar role. And then I wound up at Marsh because I had networked during that time and met with who my current boss was at an association event. And when he had an opening, he looked to me first. So, there's so many different routes you could take. There's like, as Jay mentioned, there's plenty of prescribed routes where you could start off with an internship, but also building your personal brand and networking can open up those opportunities by just meeting and talking with people. So there's tons of opportunities right now, and whether you're going through the prescribed path or you're networking with people, you know, I don't think it's incredibly difficult to find one right now, especially if you can spell, as Jay mentioned, if you can spell insurance, which isn't that difficult.
I know we're about out of time. So the only other thing I'll plug in is just that I think looking at the associations that are within the insurance industry is a great way to get your feet wet and start that networking and learn and just ask people, what do you do? I think that will really give people a good inroads into what's a right fit for me.
Totally agree.
I think we are right at time. I want to thank all the panelists for their insight and guidance shared today. And I think I'm going to kick it back to Lady.
Thanks, everyone, for sharing your insights with the audience. Keep watching. Our next panel on risk management will begin shortly. Thank you. Coming up, we have the risk management panel moderated by Joe McDonald.
Right. Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to be here. We have a fantastic panel for y'all today. Again, I'm Joe McDonald. I'm with the International Risk Management Institute and Captive.com. So I will momentarily allow the panelists to introduce themselves. But maybe to set the stage for this panel, let's go ahead and get into defining essentially what risk management is. At its heart, risk management is the formal approach to identifying, analyzing, and quantifying risk, and then taking proactive steps to minimize the financial impact of these risks. So I know that sounds a little dry, but if you think about it philosophically, ultimately, insurance risk management is kind of like the Matrix. You know, it touches everything. There's not a product that you're using now. There's not a trip you're going to go on. There's not, something you're thinking about buying or food that you get at the store or how you get to the store. All of these things are touched by ultimately insurance, risk management, risk financing, because at its heart, there's inherent risk with life, with all things in life and living. So I know that's very broad, but that to me is exciting because it exhibits how there are really just multiple ways to get into this fantastic industry. And we'll get into all that in a moment and how some of us got here. Yes, so allow me to turn your attention to our great panelists. And I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourselves. Crystal, if you'll crack it off for us.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me here. When I was thinking about joining this today and that question of what is risk management, I figured I would start off my introduction by sharing that my name is Crystal Cathcart and I'm with Verisk. Verisk is more commonly known as ISO within the insurance industry. And that topic of what is risk management, I thought it was great when I went to look on our website to see what they say about risk management. And the first thing that says in our About Us on the website is that we help our customers manage risk. And that's at the heart of everything we do. So businesses and communities everywhere are faced with risk every day. And we work to understand the true risk, develop tools and methods to manage it. And so I thought that was perfect because that's really what we all do, right? In some form or fashion. The name Verisk, the company I work for, it literally translates to truth and risk. And so in my role, what I do is I work with senior leaders across the insurance industry in commercial lines. So within carriers, MGAs, brokers, really helping them to understand what their appetite looks like, what's good and not so good within their footprint, and zeroing in on growth opportunities, really driving around growth and profitability for the entire US. And it gets down to strategic planning, product development, even sitting down with an agency and saying, this is what we want from you guys. So a couple little tidbits about myself outside of insurance. I also volunteer with a couple of nonprofits here in the Hamden, New Haven area where I live. So one of those is Gather New Haven, which includes the New Haven Land Trust. So I'm on the preserves committee and the ambassador for one of our preserves, coordinating all kinds of cool events and cleanups. I also am the VP of the board for Best Video Film and Culture Center, which is a really cool store / arts and culture center in Hamden. It's like a Blockbuster, a funky Blockbuster, met a music venue, met a coffee shop. And during the pandemic, we built a patio so that way we could do music performances outside. People could enjoy the coffee shop outside and we didn't have to shut our doors like lots of the arts venues did. So that's a little bit about me.
That's great and yeah, interesting. Not only what you do professionally, but also on the artistic side. And as I mentioned the other day, like super strong plant game in the back definitely exhibits your sort of artistic bent. That's cool. Yeah, I dig it. Jyoti, will you go ahead and take it from here and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Joe. And again, thank you for this opportunity. I'm so excited to be here and so privileged. So as Joe mentioned, I'm Jyoti Yoda. I work for the Hartford Financial Services Group, which is based right here in Hartford. If you are close to town, hopefully if you are or you pass through Hartford, you can see the Stag, which is on a very tall, dark-looking building in downtown Hartford. We are a 200-year-old company, which is pretty special. We have a pretty rich legacy and history in the insurance services community. My role, I work in model risk management, which is part of our enterprise risk management function. And as Joe mentioned, we have different areas and types of risk, right? And at the Hartford, the way there are 3 types of risk that we look at, and we organize our functions and processes around those 3 types of risk. So for example, we have market risk, which is risk to financial performance of the company coming from things that are happening in the economic or capital market. So interest rate, credit, equity markets. The second is insurance risk, which is the risk of something large or unexpected loss across multiple policies. For example, catastrophes, your hurricanes, fire, etc. And the third one is operational risk. That's where I work. And it's the risk of loss that ranges from failed process or technology. It could include things like cybersecurity, all of your malware, ransomware attacks, business resiliency, and also model risk management. And as I said, that's where I work. And I would say, before I describe it, I would say that if you love working with models and learning something new every single day about how we run the business, this would be a job for you. So very quickly, what is my responsibility is managing model risk across the company. So you might ask, well, what is model risk? Model risk is the potential for any kind of adverse outcome based on an incorrect or misused model output. So if something goes wrong with any of our models, it can lead to financial loss, it can lead to damaging a firm's reputation. And as we know, that is really big these days. How do we manage model risk at the Hartford? So we collaborate a lot with the lines of business. This is not a job where I just sit in my office all day. I am always talking and connecting with our business partners. And the way we manage model risk is doing a model validation, which is a very comprehensive model review. And the second part of my job is around governance framework, maintaining a model inventory of all models, and also implementing policy. So this is a really, really important function. And I think that it's very exciting, very interesting. There's not a day that goes by where I don't learn something new about either the financial markets or what's happening with catastrophes or the pandemic and cyber. So that's my role in a nutshell. And in terms of something fun, I was thinking about it, Crystal, your intro was awesome. I'm a reader, so I know you can't see all the books behind me, but at the end of the day, I just like to wind down with a good book and just chill.
That's it. Now, real quick, let me follow up. What kind of books do you like to read, though?
So light fiction, Joe. Sometimes if I have to read one of those business books, I will. But otherwise, I just prefer something very light. Like your murder mystery, whodunit kind of thing.
All right, cool. Yeah. I like that. A little suspense, but a little light suspense.
Yes, exactly.
Good. Thank you for that. All right, so Nick, will you jump in here and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. So yeah, just a little bit about myself. I recently graduated this past May at the University of Hartford, so very close to the company of Hartford, right in Connecticut there. So yeah, and just a little experience of just what I've done in the past, and kind of led me to this point is starting off really just in high school and throughout college. I helped at my parents' business. They have a pharmacy, Heritage Chemist, and at an early age, I feel like it really gave me just helped to give me a different mindset, of where I was going in the future. And whether you're thinking about what other kids were doing that age, I was really involved with my family's business. So I think moving forward, it really it gave me a lot to think about and gave me a broader perspective of how I look at different businesses and things in that sense. So really, what I learned from there is, all businesses and things like that, they never stop adopting and growing, and that's how you be successful. So moving forward into college and stuff, I interned at the Hanover for the summer of 2020 for an underwriting intern for their specialty lines. And moving forward past that, my senior year, I interned at an insurtech called Intelligence, and they were an ecosystem as a service, which it sounds very complex, and to an extent actually is, but it was I gotta say, it was really kind of a step away from seeing the traditional insurance to where insurance is today. And it really just amazed me, the innovation and the amount of growth that is really going to be prepared for in this market, and the potential moving forward and stuff. So definitely very excellent. And during that same time, I participated in the Spencer Rims Risk Management Challenge, where my team and the small college of the University of Hartford was able to take first place, and it was a national competition. So it definitely was a huge accomplishment, and I got just learning so much from just different perspectives on how I really see the industry and just all risks in general at that point. So I was very fortunate for that. And just again, graduating this past May, I started again at the Hanover in June. So I'm working as an underwriting technician for their small commercial new business line. So overall, it's going really well. And kind of just like relating to the insurance industry as a whole, and risk management in that sense, kind of talking about what you said before, Joe, really analyzing, identifying, responding to events and situations. It really is quite interesting, because no matter what risk or market you're looking at, it's everywhere, like what you said. And a perfect example is just COVID itself. Like, it wasn't just like a risk, but it was like a global pandemic. It really, years before the pandemic, was like the risk was there, but it's not that it wasn't recognized, but it really just wasn't anticipated. And it really, like, people, companies, nations, they weren't prepared for it. So I think really seeing the behind essence of strategy and risk management, it really shows how these things can be undermined and really analyzed to help prevent us to be more prepared for different things. And I think insurance, again, is like really the key to that. And it's really just the same concept. Risks are everywhere, and I think it's really interesting going back to technology and innovation of insurance, because what I see from a traditional insurance model is that it was very reactive, whereas 10, 15 years ago, it's talking about a home or something, say that a pipe burst, after that, claims would be paid out in that sense. Whereas now, with all the innovation with technology, sensors, data, things like that, the insurance industry is really taking a leap to being more proactive in that sense, trying to recognize claims and risks, pandemics, all these things before they occur. And I think it's very interesting to see where it's going to go moving forward. So.
Yeah, it certainly is, Nick, and thank you for that. And you're right. There's some really fascinating things that are taking place, and we'll get to maybe more in a moment with some of the perspectives on the future of risk. But just to reiterate to anyone watching out there, and I think all the panelists have done a great job of expressing just how fulfilling their professional careers thus far have been. And I want to again reiterate to anyone who is watching that whether you're a college student at present, whether you're a recent grad, like Nick here, whether you're a young professional in the industry, outside the industry, looking for something new to do, a new exciting career, there is a place for you in the risk management industry where you can find a very fulfilling, very lucrative in a lot of ways, career where you can carve out the kind of life that you want, and do some really again fascinating things and work with, in my opinion, some of the best and brightest people that are out there. It's one of the reasons why I have no idea why I'm in the industry. I'm certainly not one of the best and brightest, but the panelists, as you all can see, I mean, really are. And it's really a great place to be. So I just want to reiterate that and try to, market for the industry a little bit, and say, hey, come check us out, because there's some really great things that you could do here. So let me ask the panelists this. Nick, you kind of got into how you got involved in the industry, but Crystal and Jyoti, how did y'all get into the industry? Do y'all have a formal academic background in actuarial sciences or accounting or something like this, or did y'all start off thinking, hey, when you were in grade school, I definitely want to be in risk management? Will y'all please both speak on that?
Sure, I could start. I did not know this is what I wanted to grow up and become. I spent a good amount of time after I went to college drifting, you could say. Not really sure what I wanted to do. I spent about a decade working in a bunch of different industries, from hospitality, market research, marketing. I went to school for business and marketing, and it was pretty broad. I figured I could go anywhere. And as a result, I spent a lot of time going everywhere. For me, though, I've been thinking, since we had a call together as a group about a week ago, I've been thinking more about my journey to this becoming a career, not just a job, because I've had a lot of jobs. When I got into insurance, I started out thinking of this just as another job. I was an assistant for a couple agents, eventually became an agent here in Connecticut. I was an agent for 5 years. And once I got into P&C, I really loved it. I started out in life and health, and it wasn't quite for me. And then I got in property and casualty and just found my place. And it became a career for me when I got to really service 2 really large hurricane tropical storm events that came through Connecticut. So some of you may remember Irene and Sandy and the devastating effect that they had on our community. I was an agent at the time and really got to get hands-on with a lot of that claim activity. I, as an agent, had kind of fielded one-off car accidents or small losses, things like that. And in this particular case, I had people whose homes were completely wiped out and were finding their property a mile down the road. People, elderly, who had no family in the area, and I literally was going over their house to put little lights on the stairs so they could find their way around the house where there was no power for a week. And that's when I knew I was making a big impact. I did not really ever think I would be a fireman or an ambulance driver or police. And once I got into being in the insurance industry, I realized we're the second responders, regardless of what your job is. After somebody has an emergency, they call the police or the fire department, and the insurance agent is the next call that they're making. And I never really appreciated that until I lived some pretty significant or witnessed some other people having really significant events and realized how important my role in their life was at that moment, and really felt like I was making a difference. And from there, I started to think, what's making this industry tick? How is this all working? What's going on the carrier side to really make sure that they're able to do this and do this well? So I shifted from being an agent and got into what I do now, really focusing on a national scale with carriers, large, small, entries into the market, specialists and generalists, really making sure they understand their markets and that they're able to select their risks appropriately based on their strengths. And I went from being the trusted advisor to my insureds to now being the trusted advisor for what feels like the entire commercial lines industry. And that's pretty powerful. So that was how I got into the industry.
Yeah, that's that very interesting for sure. And in a way that you found yourself in a certain sense, professionally in the industry, and found a way that you could employ your strengths, your talents, and the things that you enjoy doing to help others. And I mean, how great is that to find a career that not only are you fulfilled and and making money to have the life that you want, but also ultimately you're adding value to your community, you're helping others in really significant ways. And I like how you put that as far as second responders. I might qualify that a little bit and call it financial responders. Once the physical threat has been abated, then okay, then you're right. They call their insurance agent, the insurance company. They say, hey, where does my policy sit? Where is this contract? What do I have to financially to help get me back to where I was? So really great points, and thank you for sharing that, Crystal. Jyoti, how did you get into the the risk management industry?
Thank you, Joe, and I agree. That was such an inspirational story, Crystal. So for me, Joe, it was, I'll tell you, by accident or by luck. And what I mean by that is, so I have an MBA in finance from UConn. And after I left UConn, I went to work for the Stanley Works, now called Stanley Black & Decker. For any of you that works with tools, or maybe your parents do some home improvement, you've probably seen, the tape rolls and the screwdrivers that we make. And my role there was in financial planning and analysis. And about 5 years later, I said, I want to do something different. So I went to work for a pre-IPO startup. It was a tech company. And this was probably 20 years ago. So when some of you were getting ready for kindergarten, we had this tech bubble. And the pre-IPO startup company that I went to was making fiber optic networking products. I said, oh, this is cool. I got a bunch of stock options. And I said, wow, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to retire at 30. Well, 6 months later, there's a tech bust. So the bubble, like any bubble, had to burst. And we entered a pretty recessionary period around that time. And I was looking for my next job. And, it was kind of a scary time. But I will say, thanks to a few things, the power of good friends and good relationships, and just the power of positive thinking that I think we need through our life. One of my old colleagues at Stanley had a family member working for the Hartford. And he said, hey, call Tracy, they might have a job for you. I said, great. And it was a budget analyst, a financial analyst job at the Hartford. And I remember going in for my interview and saying, gosh, I don't know anything about insurance. What is insurance? I don't understand it. I was pretty panicked. It wasn't something that I could really relate to. But I got the job, and the rest is history. And what I mean by that is, so I just celebrated 20 years with the Hartford, and 20 years is a long time, right? You're probably thinking, what? I don't even see myself 20 years from now. But what I love about the company and 3 years now in risk management is, one is the opportunity to just learn and grow every single day. I think that is so important for you to do what you love, to work with good people, and to always have the opportunity to learn. I love risk management. I spent most of my early career at the Hartford building models and doing some of the data analytics models. Nothing too fancy, I will tell you that, nothing as sophisticated as I see today in risk management. But I love the team and the group that I work with, because they are all actuarials and data scientists, so like much smarter than me. I'm like the least educated and probably the least smart person in my group. But not a day goes by that I ever feel that. I learned so much about risk. I hope that we've given you a bit of insight into how diverse it can be. You could be dealing with cybersecurity, as I said, you could be dealing with models, and you could be dealing with catastrophes, right? Like Crystal said, this is real stuff, like the floods and the hurricanes, like Ida. And every single day of my job, I'm learning something new about what that means to the company, and how do we identify risks? How do we protect and mitigate for those risks and make sure that our customers are always taken care of? And even though my day-to-day job might sound perhaps pretty technical, we are actually looking at all of these things, which is how does what we do impact our customer? And at the end of the day, whether you're Apple or Google or Amazon, it really doesn't matter if you're not doing something to impact your community and your customer. if you're not excited every single day getting up in the morning to say, wow, I really love what I do, at the end of the day, those things are really, really important. So, just to close it out, I think risk management is one of the best jobs that I've had, certainly because it speaks to some of my background, but because I can learn something every single day and I work with a great group of people. So I really hope that that gives you some inspiration into, I ended up here by accident, but it's been great.
Yes, thank you, Jyoti. And yes, in similar fashion, and just briefly, I kind of, as I mentioned, I think the other day in our call, I kind of slipped on a banana peel and landed in this industry as well, and I'm very grateful for that. And then more so in the real niche of captive insurance, which I think, just as a little promo, that. Forgive me, y'all, but in the risk management industry and insurance, you want to be in captives. That's my opinion. I think they're the most creative, most really nimble, alternative risk transfer mechanisms. They are kind of at the top of the pyramid of controlling, owning, financing, all the things you can do with risk, managing them, and supporting parent company operations in a really sophisticated way, which again, I think is really exciting. But that said, I my academic background is actually in philosophy and religious studies, and got into insurance. A mentor of mine was kind enough to say, hey, what exactly are you going to do when you graduate? It's great you're reading these books, but what are you going to do? And I was like, that's a good question. So then he kind of pointed me and said, hey, until you figure it out, why don't you get an insurance? And I was like, all right, let me try this out. And much like Crystal, starting a job, like, that's a job, and you're grateful for it, it's a job. And then all of a sudden you find, you come into your own, you find a place where you're comfortable. So I know we only have a few minutes here, but real quick, I want to ask each of the panelists, so for what's the future of risk and risk management? Again, we're short on time, but I want to hear from all of you. And Nick, you led into it with your introduction. I want you to go into that. What's going on the tech side with insurance and with all of that? Yes.
Yeah. So I'd be more than happy to just go into a little bit, but we're really living in an age that just, change is just, it's at a point where it's just part of like every day. Every day brings something new and something different, and the innovation, especially what I've seen in just like the insurtech industry and even fintech and things like that, it's really incredible. I think one of the biggest things like moving forward is like AI and blockchain, being able to use those abilities to, in every sense of what we're working with. And I think data just as a whole is just, it's interesting to think about, but I think that data is going to be not only the biggest opportunity, but essentially it could be the biggest problem that, could be faced moving forward. So.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nick. And I think you're right. And that I'm going to just go ahead and jump and point to Crystal, because you deal with some of the largest data sets in the world. Will you speak on that?
Yeah, so Verisk is in a really critical place where we have over 22 billion records in commercial and personal lines that we hold. And we have a lot of responsibility to protect that data and use it ethically. When we look at where we can be providing resources to the industry, one thing we do is really exciting March Madness bracket, looking at emerging issues and kind of using it as a lighthearted way to interact with our customers on what the serious issues are coming up in the pipeline, and trying to see what is front of mind for our customers. Is it opioids, biometrics, 5G, AI, like what's going on that we can be putting our massive amount of expertise and resources towards, and creating the solutions the industry will need tomorrow, rather than just relying on what we've had in the past. Two things that are going on in my world that I sit in right now is during the pandemic, we saw a lot of unprofitable businesses were actually the ones that were being lost as a result of the pandemic. In the restaurant industry, arts and hospitality, that gives the industry an opportunity to think about re-rating those risks and being smarter about how they're writing them. While at the same time, we have this huge emergence of new businesses coming into the market that creates a whole new set of opportunity in spaces like construction and trade, transportation. So those are a couple of things I'm thinking about and we're thinking about here.
Right. And finally, Jyoti, for things you're seeing on the horizon.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think the exact same things Crystal and Nick talked about. So right now, AI and the use of AI and the potential impact that it can have to customers like bias, right, is something that we're worried about, or I should say excited about. So you probably saw in the news a couple of years ago, the Apple credit card and the Optum insurance company issue around data bias. A lot of excitement happening out there and something for us to keep an eye on with just regulatory changes and just more of that focus.
Right. Well, fantastic. I think we have now come up against time. And I just wanted to thank Crystal, Jyoti, Nick, thank you all for being here. Lady, thank you for the invitation and setting all of this up. It's really been a privilege to moderate this panel. And I hope that it gives, the viewers some further interest in getting involved in the risk management and risk industries.
Thanks everyone for the great discussion. Stay tuned. Our next panel on alternative risk and hedge funds is next. Up next is the panel on alternative risk and hedge funds, moderated by John Thompson.
Thank you, lady, and good afternoon, everyone. At least it's afternoon here on the East Coast in the U.S. Today, I'm very fortunate to be working with three panelists. I'll introduce them in a minute, but it's a great panel with a very group number of experienced individuals that are going to bring some great perspectives. So the first panelist I want to introduce is Bill Goddard. Bill is a very experienced risk and risk management and insurance professional. He's an attorney by education and training. He's a principal at CMOS Partners, which is a financial advisory firm for insurance and risk bearing entities. He's also a professor at the University of Connecticut and their School of Law. A very interesting piece is Bill co-teaches a course in InsurTech that's offered for both students from UConn and the University of Hartford in Hartford, where I'm based as well. And he works with my colleague Ken Goldstein, and they have a very dynamic course in InsurTech. So thanks, Bill, very much for being on the panel, and welcome.
My pleasure.
I also want to introduce Rocco Mancini. Rocco is a vice president at Marsh Captive Solutions. Marsh, interestingly, also is an alum of the University of Connecticut. And I had the pleasure of working with Rocco when he was finishing his undergraduate work. And he worked with me as an intern at the Connecticut Insurance Department. For those of you who don't know Rocco, he's also earned his designation through the institutes and has an associate's in risk management, an ARM designation. And finally, I want to introduce Dr. Marcus Schmalbach. Marcus is the president and CEO of RiskX. RiskX is a risk management and risk financing firm kind of co-located and co-based in Berlin, Germany, as well as in New York. So gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. It's a great honor for me to be with you today. What we wanted to focus on is sort of the recent global events, such as climate change, pandemic, and cyber risk, and what they present in terms of challenges to organizations and corporates as they attempt to really manage the financial impact of these emerging risks. Historically, the insurance and reinsurance industries have either been a total solution or a partial solution in the tools for managing and financing risk in these areas. But today, these entities are not able to provide the full risk management solutions that insurance buyers are looking for. And what we want to talk about is what do we see as the direction of which we're going in terms of new sources of risk capital that can be used and deployed to manage those emerging risks. And one of the interesting sources of new capital is in the area of hedge funds. So I want to begin with a question to Marcus. Do you see the emergence of alternative capital and risk financing as a disruptive change, or is it part of an evolutionary process in risk management and financing? And when we look at InsurTech, which Bill is very experienced in, we talk about sort of the orientation of the innovation in terms of the processes of the insurance industry. But Marcus, what do you see with respect to alternative capital and risk financing?
Yeah, thank you for asking me. Frankly, I don't see it as disruptive as maybe many people do. As we look back in history and see the early stages of Lloyd's of London, which have been a coffee house, it's nothing else what they did in the 17th century. It was businessmen who, let's say in Britain, it would be okay to say bet. They bet on something and they covered for example, the Titanic and the sister ship Olympus by defining an event. Let's say they started in Southampton and they will not reach the New York harbor. And so no one ever talked about a box at Lloyd's an insurer or a syndicate at Lloyd's. It was really businessmen in the heart of London who, let's say, covered £1,000 and get on the opposite side £5 or £10 or £50. Sorry, I've not been there in the 17th century, but they get something like an interest rate on that. And this was more likely the beginning of Lloyd's of London as we know it today, with the boxes and the syndicates driven by insurers. So I would say the insurance itself was an evolution of this process. And now we are more likely going back in that days because of the changing risk landscape and the demands of the companies. So for me, it's more likely on the one hand the evolution, or we go back in time, and neither disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see sort of that a lot of people, I mean, including myself, have sometimes looked at this new capital and new alternative, contracts that are sometimes used to deploy new capital. We hear things about parametric triggers, and which are very different than the world of insurance indemnity that we've come from in the past. But I think you put it very well in perspective that it's really kind of part of an evolutionary process versus a disruptive process. But I want to flip over to Bill for a second and get your views, Bill, because as a person with a deep career in risk management and insurance, and your work as an attorney and advising, but also as an educator and teaching, what do you see as the skills and education that students today should be acquiring as they prepare for a career in risk management and risk financing?
Gosh, there's so many things there. Thank you, John. I have to say I'm not an attorney anymore, which is blissful on my part, but it means that anything I say isn't legal advice. But we're going through just an amazing time right now. I mean, you're seeing this huge rise in volatility in the markets, and rise in volatility of technology, rise in volatility of extreme weather events, and credit events are becoming, credit markets at the moment are stable, but I think a lot of people think there could be volatility there again. And there's so many tools at the disposal of the risk professional to try to manage that risk. But there's some really exciting things going on. I've invested in 10 insurtech startups. I know that half of them will fail because that's how startups work. But nonetheless, they are each evolving insurance, involving the transfer of risk, and involving the customer experience, which is so critical, because the customer experience we've had for the last 100 years in insurance is changing in the property casualty world as there's more and more data. And it's about to change in the life insurance world, because for the first time, we have data to price life insurance, which I know sounds ironic, but life insurance traditionally was priced with tables. And it's now something that can be modeled, genetic data where it's permissible, all sorts of different data about what people do and how they do feeds into mortality. And it's a very exciting time with the word that you can never mention, annuities, because the longevity risk is with us in ways that it didn't used to be. And so now we're talking about retirement plans and various kinds of saving mechanisms, and then hedging those for longevity. And, what's the worst fear everybody has? They'll outlive their money. And they hate the word annuity. So the customer-centric vision of annuity sales is going to be revolutionized over the next 20 years. So it's a really exciting time to have a role in insurance and to help corporates risk transfer, to help individuals risk transfer. And for those people who are really aware of risk, like hedge funds, it is an important time to accept the right risks, gauge them, and make a profit on them. And nobody's better at that than Berkshire Hathaway. So you have real opportunities in thousands of different places you can go to have an exciting career as insurance changes. But there's just one thing I'd add, which is the regulatory mechanism in insurance in the United States is totally different from anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there are tremendous opportunities in the 56 state regulators who each regulate activities selling insurance and the solvency of insurers in their individual state. And those regulators are hungry for people who understand technology and who understand insurance and are willing to look at the risks insurance companies take.
Well, I'm very intrigued, Bill, by your comment, particularly when you began your remarks in terms of this, the changing customer experience and sort of the impact or the application of data. And it's not necessarily the existence of data, but it's actually using data, I believe I understood you to say, in sort of a lot of these decision-making processes, which had been made in different ways as in the past. And also I was intrigued by your comment about, I could start to see you sort of looking at sort of the property and casualty insurance industry very similar, or at least becoming more similar with the life and health side. That something when they were kind of always viewed as being so distinct and separate, as actually these impacts of customer experience and data are affecting them. Although it may be differently, they're both being impacted with data.
Very much so. It's we talk about big data and artificial intelligence and blockchain, right, which are really just shorthand ways of talking about a distributed ledger, of talking about very large volumes of evaluative data that's available to everybody, and ways to deal with that data in sophisticated new algorithm management. Wow. And it's just very, very cool stuff. And I certainly have to say I really enjoy it.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Rocco, let me turn to you, because you're a rising young professional in this industry, and I've had the personal opportunity to work with you and been very impressed with your vision and your analytic capability and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about how you see sort of the things in you as you've entered your career that Bill spoke about in terms of this, this data and using it in decision making, and as well as, I guess, on the operation side, in terms of how do companies that are risk bearers manage and use data? And what do you see as some of the technology? Bill mentioned blockchain. Tell me about your experiences in this area.
Sure. So I'll start by giving an example where I've specifically worked with clients where my background is in captive insurance. So it's very interesting in captive insurance is where a company will form a wholly owned insurance company underneath specific legislation. And there's a lot of value in that. It allows the company to deploy their own capital in a risk management vehicle that could help them manage risks in unique ways and leverage data. And it could be simple or it could be complex. For example, cyber liability is a very hot button issue right now. And one of the things we've done with clients in the past is we've worked with them to help use their own capital in a captive insurance company to strengthen their cybersecurity standards and ensure internal compliance with their cybersecurity standards. And they did this by, much like if you work with a traditional insurance company, if you don't have good cybersecurity controls in place, you're going to be charged more premiums. They used a similar method with their own captive insurance company. Even though they were paying money to themselves effectively, they could go to their individual business units and say, hey, if you meet X, Y, and Z cybersecurity standards, we will charge you a much more favorable premium for this layer of risk. But if you don't comply, you're going to be charged a much higher rate, much like a traditional insurance company would charge you. And they're able to leverage that data and use that to enhance the controls they have in place and have better loss controls. It's a good example of how, if the insurance market itself isn't willing to deploy their own capital to help you transfer these risks, how you can better deploy your own capital to manage those risks. And then the other piece you mentioned was blockchain, specifically like that. And it's actually an area that I'm very interested in, the avenue of captive insurance, because one of the things when you're working with your own insurance company, and one of the things, especially anywhere in the insurance industry where there's certificates of insurance that need to be issued and that need to be evidenced, you're often working with multiple service providers who are all sharing data. Blockchain is the vehicle where we're actively exploring where, if we could, speed up how we share this data, can we better use can companies better deploy their capital in order to address those risks? So blockchain is a technology where it's as simple as, if you look at the process today, when you work with regulators anywhere in insurance, and the amount of red tape and the amount of data that needs to be shared, using technology like blockchain to share that data can help speed things up, can create efficiencies that we haven't seen before. And I think the core of what I want to address is that, and with just InsurTech, all the technologies we've been talking about, I think the most important thing is even if those technologies themselves don't disrupt, it's given us all an opportunity to look at underlying processes that maybe we haven't looked at for years, and actually re-envision those and think about those a bit differently. The same with the harder market conditions where it's difficult to access insurance capital. We were doing things the same way for such a long time, and now it's suddenly shifted. And now this is where we're seeing people being creative with, there's new capital that's appearing. In captive insurance, we've seen companies deploying their capital in new and unique ways, and even internally looking how we can leverage new technologies to address these problems. And it's really a product of the changing times. And I think, like I said, the fact that we're actually looking at these processes again is where that evolution is coming from.
Rocco, that's a very interesting answer, and I'm glad you touched on both, again, on your experiences on data and helping you help your clients understand their risk position and their risk behaviors and actions based upon what you're seeing in the data. And you talked about blockchain as a tool which is really facilitates the access and the movement of data and really helping it drive this risk financing and risk management process. And I'm interested because you gave two examples that are very parallel to what Bill said in the opening comments about how you gave examples of how data is implied in the P&C arena, almost in a very similar way that Bill pointed to in the beginning about how data is utilized in life and health differently today. And it's almost like this, with data, we're able to see these new alternative risk factors. So it seems to me, I want to flip back to Marcus for a minute and say, Marcus, with kind of this, change with data and blockchain and our change of orientation, what opportunities do you see with this migration with respect to using alternative capital to address these emerging systemic risks, but also deploying capital in a very informed way using data?
As you mentioned, I'm working for a startup. So normally, if you have to make a startup pitch, you always start with the problem. So I would love to start here with the problem again, because if there's no need to bring new capital in, then we solve a problem which is not existing. As both of my panel partners mentioned before, we have now new data. Rocco said captive is a wonderful solution. I absolutely agree. But frankly, we're talking about systemic risks, and then the law of large numbers, which is more likely the underlined approach of an insurance, does not really work anymore. So we have to look for different opportunities or approaches. And here the alternative capital market coming in. And now, from my perspective, we have to find and bring all these nice buzzwords we heard tonight. Parametric, AI, blockchain, systemic risk, stuff like that. Some people may think these are separated parts to each other, but I think, no, we have to put them as puzzle parts together, and then we see a holistic approach. And from my personal understanding, let's start with Rocco's captive. If the data they have, and data is the new oil in-house, and you have the opportunity of setting up a captive, then you might use a blockchain technology or on the one hand to trade that risk to counterparts which are no insurance companies. And as we mentioned, there might be, as Bill said, the opportunity that there are some of the 50 states who make a revolution and say, okay, we also allow you as a captive not just buying reinsurance, but also work with hedge funds, ILS funds or stuff like that to create a reinsurance capacity or a capacity for head. Yeah, I do not know an equivalent word to reinsurance, reinsure your captive. And now, why should it be parametric? There are every single game has its own rules, and the capital market does not understand what indemnity insurance is. Frankly, sometimes I do not even understand myself why we do it in an indemnity way. But if we need the capital from alternative markets, we have to make it the solution that they can understand and that they can handle it. And so parametric is equivalent to index-based. And index-based is what the capital market is working on. It's just then if this happens, then this is more likely what I have to do. On the one hand, earn some money, or on the other hand, I lose some money, and adapt it to our market. For example, the contract looks like I have a cyber attack. Let's stay with this example, and I have, for example, due to a cyber attack or a data breach or whatever, and due to that, as we have seen with Facebook, my share price slumps not just for a night or two, but for a longer time, and that has a deep impact on my company and especially my captive. And then I need someone who jumps in and pay that. And if the capacity of the insurers is not existing, or they are not interested in taking the kind of risk, I have to sensitize the appetite of the alternative capital market, and they will more likely ask for parametric solutions because they need it quick and fast, and they are not interested in making a claim adjustment process or stuff like that. And so for me, the things we already bespoken are not buzzwords. This is a completely whole new approach, saying we link the tech opportunities of AI, blockchain, captive, for example, together, and have the tools brought together to get access to the capital market, and hopefully they have some appetite on assisting me with reinsuring or re-hedging my risks, especially in the systemic and emerging risk landscape.
Wow, that's a very interesting kind of summary, how you help move us from kind of some of the components to kind of what the future might look like. But in terms of looking at the future, one of the things that I focus on a daily basis here in my role at the Barney School of Business in the University of Hartford, and is not dissimilar to what Bill sees in his work when he's co-teaching with one of my faculty colleagues, is what does this mean for students in terms of that are in the area that are preparing themselves for a career in business, and specifically in risk management and insurance. And Rocco, I want to turn to you for get your perspectives, because you had a very sound preparation in your undergraduate, but what have you done to prepare yourself to be a trusted advisor, if you will, in the captive solutions area? And you're obviously very competent in that area. What do you recommend in terms of others, students that are beginning their careers in risk management insurance? How should they be preparing themselves for success?
Yeah, that's a very good question, John. It actually shows in my day-to-day where, because captives being an alternative risk financing mechanism, I actually get to see it from the other side, where risk managers are coming to us because it's come to a point where there's no other solutions and they're trying to find something new. And they're trying to find new solutions that they hadn't looked at in the past. And oftentimes that's a very challenging position to come from. And they're often put in a position of a lot of pressure. And one of the things I've learned from working with a lot of risk managers in the captive space and in general is that, and one of the things that I've actually tried to do, learning from that, is that it's much better to be proactive and be ahead of these changes and start looking for these, unique and creative solutions, even before, we're facing the systemic risks that Marcus had mentioned, for example. We see a lot of mobilization for these new opportunities for a problem that's very severe right now. But, there's been a lot of talk for the past few years prior to this of these problems that we're facing in the industry, and the risks that they were causing. If you look a few years back, we were already seeing some of these catastrophic weather events, and we were seeing a pattern formed. And being able to start thinking creatively today and thinking creatively ahead of time and looking at these solutions and leveraging all of the data you have available to think about things more proactively winds up putting you in a much better position. Because I've worked with clients where they were looking towards alternative risk financing mechanisms as a means to reactively address a problem. And I've also worked with them where they were looking at it proactively. And by approaching these things proactively, you often find they're better able to leverage data. You know, that they have more time to collect the data, which means that they have more time to use it effectively. They have more time to look at what the best solutions are. You know, Marcus listed off so many different pieces of this puzzle. And so many times we see where you only have enough time to implement one or two pieces, but when you have them all of them coming together, you know, having a parametric solution that's AI driven, that eliminates the need to work with maybe a third-party administrator, eliminates costs, makes the coverage very clear and consistent, and creates new options. You know, these are solutions that come up proactively, and one of the reasons why we see startups like Marcus is popping up, because building these solutions and having these options and looking at these problems proactively is what allows us to evolve. If we're always in a position where we're just reacting, then it's very difficult to evolve, because once you react to the first problem, you got to react to the next one, and so on and so forth. So the lesson I want for anyone coming out of college is to start looking at some emerging technologies, start looking at these alternative risk financing mechanisms. Just knowing how to spell captive insurance, AI, parametric insurance, blockchain, coming out of college means that when you run into these problems, they may not be the right solution, but knowing that you can look towards these and that you have options, critical, because the worst case is to be very reactive where you only have one or two options and you're scrambling to find a better one.
Can I just second that? And what an exciting time this is for careers. Some friends of mine and I found a risk that wasn't covered by insurance that's dealt with technology. We got together a reinsurer, a third-party administrator, a policy issuing company, and we'll be able to have a going venture, which will probably include a captive. You know, just sort of out of whole cloth, out of my retirement. You know, that opportunity is there. You can be a vendor to those startups. You can be a startup. You can analyze the risk. There's just so many places to go. And we're lucky in Connecticut to have such a high quality department. Commissioner Mays and Deputy Hirschman are really very aware of these risks and how they're regulated and how to think about solvency and market practice in this environment. And George Bradner, who's head of the Property Casualty Division, really is a master of InsurTech and technology. So this is a great opportunity, great time, and a great place to do it.
Yeah, Bill, I'm glad you jumped in there, because you were kind of, I think you're hearing it the same way I was. You know, if I take away some of the key parts from what we talked about this afternoon, in terms of things kept coming forward, like, you know, data and analytics and understanding risk and being proactive. And it really points us in this direction. All those lead to what we need to have is this focus on innovation. And that's interesting to me, because that's kind of what InsurTech is all about. And that's kind of, I guess, where we manifest a lot of innovation in the insurance industry, is in that space. And Bill, and you're a big part of that. So I think that's a very good message, because preparing for a career in insurance is very different today. And it's much more really understanding what's behind it in terms of data and risk and analytics is far stronger than understanding the 165 lines of a fire insurance policy, which is sort of how many people, including myself, when we began our careers in insurance decades ago, were trained. And now the preparation is a lot more intense. But it's also, I think, offers a lot more excitement, and while challenging, it offers an opportunity to bring in, you know, creativity and collaboration and have these critical thinking skills and being able to problem solve. And that's what students I see, and I'm sure you do, Bill, in your teaching, is what's important. And Marcus, you see in terms of your industry, that's the orientation you want to have the rising professionals be able to do. With that, I think we've had a very good discussion this afternoon. This is a discussion, actually, we could have spent an entire 2 days talking about just this topic, because it's just so interesting and so exciting. And it really does portray a very exciting future for an industry that some people thought was getting a little dated and lackluster. But the future offers many excitements and opportunities for individuals to bring new skills and new competencies to deploy and create and build the future.
Thanks, John, for having us.
Thank you so much for sharing such helpful information with our audience. Everyone stay tuned with us. The power of networking will begin shortly. And now I would like to introduce our closing panel, The Power of Networking, moderated by Brooke Penders.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lady. It's great to be here, and I know that all of us panelists have felt both the joy, the energy, and perhaps the angst of networking. We're here to share with you some of those stories, some tips, some advice. Any questions you might have, please throw them in the chat. And with that, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and share a small story about one of their early career networking wins, losses, or perhaps something they wish they would have known before they walked in. And with that, I'm going to start with Ian Thomas.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ian Thomas. I recently graduated from the University of Hartford. I graduated in May. I had a major in accounting with a double minor in actuarial science, as well as risk management and insurance. And currently I'm working as an underwriter associate at Business Risk Partners. It's an insurance company located in Windsor, Connecticut. Speaking from the perspective of a recent graduate, I've had a lot of anxiety going to different networking events, and probably none more than my first event. This was a college fair put on by the University of Hartford. And, one thing I wish I had known coming into that event was that I really need to prepare my story to be able to provide to the different people there. I just felt like I didn't have enough of the ability to walk up to somebody confidently and give my brief and concise story about myself, a short little introduction about who I am, the different strengths that I have, and the different strengths that I can bring to their company. So I would just give a little bit of a suggestion to any rising graduates, any rising undergraduates, to really take a moment to reflect and consider the experiences that you've gone through and how they've helped you and how they can be of use to the different companies that you're looking at.
Thanks, Ian. Dan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Dan Sardilli. I work at Sardilli Insurance Agency. We're a small independent broker based out of Southington, Connecticut. We specialize in personal and commercial insurance. I'm also very involved in a young professional organization called Spark, which is based out of the River Valley Chamber of Commerce. So I've worked with Kim in the past with Hype, and we've done a lot of networking events together and separately through that. So I'm excited to talk about networking and what we do and my experience with that as we get along. My first networking event was really nerve-wracking too, and I can relate to you, but for a different reason. My previous job required absolutely no networking whatsoever. So to come into a room full of business owners and other sales professionals and to try to figure out who to talk to and where to find that right person in the room was really challenging. But one of the things that I took away from it was that there are so many other people in that room that are also there solo and are also kind of misfits, if you will. So kind of seeking and finding those people and just kind of relating to them in that way was really helpful to start off, because everybody just wants to talk to somebody. So it's good to get the ball rolling.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Carmela. Carmela, I think you're still on mute.
Sorry. Good afternoon. My name's Carmela Malone, and I work for the Hartford Financial Services Group. I'm the Senior Vice President of Enabling Solutions, and our team supports both our claims and our operations organization within the Hartford. I'm also very involved in the National African American Insurance Association. I am currently the president of the Greater Hartford chapter and on the board. When I think about the networking experience, so first of all, I've been in the industry quite a while. The anxiety around networking, I think it lessens, but it never completely goes away for some of us, and at least that's my experience. I think for me, what I have learned along the way is that most times people just want to talk about whatever is happening in life or about what's going on with them or learn more about you. And so finding that common ground whether it's sports or a hobby or something that's happened recently. I always find it's a good start. And I wish I had known that years ago, just because of the level of anxiety of trying to find the right thing to talk about.
Hey, Brooke, on you there. I did that now. Okay. Thanks, Carmela. Kim, now to you.
Hi, I'm Kim Bishop. I am the Chief Talent Officer at the Metro Hartford Alliance. The Metro Hartford Alliance is a regional economic development organization and also houses the City of Hartford's Chamber of Commerce. And part of my role is overseeing our professional networking group, HYPE, Hartford Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs. So that's how Dan and I know each other. Something about networking, I shouldn't say this because networking is kind of what I do for work, but I hate networking. I hated networking and ended up doing it for a living. So it can be made to be fun. But when you're in, I think, more of those like really structured networking settings, I really wish I understood my purpose for being there. A lot of times, especially at the collegiate level, they say you've got to get out there, you've got to network, but there's never really a why behind it. So I think I wish I would have known keeping that why. Is there a goal I'm trying to achieve? Is it just getting to know people? Is it getting to know a specific person? Is it getting a job or an internship? And keeping that as my focus, but at the same time, not engaging with people who can't get me there, because you never know where someone is going to end up down the road. So there's always a positive to networking, but really having kind of that goal, I think, is really, really helpful. And I wish I would have known that earlier.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you all for sharing your memories and tidbits and advice about your first networking experiences. Unlike Kim, networking is in my DNA. I did it early in my career. I did it as a child. I didn't even know I was doing it. And then I read Malcolm Gladwell's book and learned that I was a connector, and connectors are natural networkers. So it's something I often go to in with great enthusiasm and glee. And I actually have to do what Ian suggested you do, which is what's my focus and what's my story? Because I could talk to anyone about anything and I'll find you a job, I'll find you a volunteer opportunity, I'll find you someone to date. I will figure out a way to connect you with somebody. So having a focus is a great idea. And to Kim's point, if my focus of this event is going in to find clients, that's one thing. Secondarily, I know my organization that I volunteer for needs new board members. Maybe I'll try and think about who could join us there. And then third is just, I love new and interesting people, and maybe I'll spend some time trying to build my personal friend network too. So I think walking into an event, maybe with 1 to 3 ideas, so you don't feel as though if you didn't hit that one thing, you've made progress somewhere in some kind of way, because networking is not just for your professional life, it can be for your personal life, it can be related to your community and volunteering as well. So my first event I went to because I was hungry. I worked on Capitol Hill and someone was hosting an event with some phenomenal food. In hindsight, the organization that was hosting that event had incredible people there. And I was intimidated. I was young. I went to eat. I kind of stood around, and even though I'm somewhat an extrovert, I just really, to Ian's point, didn't know what to say and wasn't sure how to position myself. So every little bit of prep that goes into those events, after you eat, you can walk around and then have something very specific to talk about. So with that, I'm going to pose a few questions to the panelists. Again, for those of you joining us, if you have any questions as we go along, please throw them in the chat and we'll be sure to get to them. One thing I want to make sure we talk about is networking and leveraging that network are very different. So having a network and then leveraging it moving forward are two very different things. What recommendations do each of you have to staying connected with the people you actually meet when you're out networking, either formally or informally? Anyone want to take that one?
I can jump in. I definitely think that one of the rules that I learned really early on is all about the follow-up. When you're in a large group environment and you're in a large room networking with a ton of people, there's not all right, I'll say this with tongue in cheek. There's not a ton that happens at that event, right? You get to know that person, you feel that chemistry, you kind of figure out if you can work together. But what really happens and where that true connection continues is in that one-to-one meeting where you dive deeper into that individual, into their business, and how you can kind of work together. I think that's like the first step of kind of leveraging versus having a network, in my experience at least.
Ian?
Yeah, and to piggyback off of Dan's point, he's right. He's completely right. At the beginning, I feel like it's just a time to meet the person, introduce yourself on a short basis. And then after that, it's really up to you to take that connection, that person that you just met, and your relationship to the next level. And speaking on today's environment and what's going on with social media, I think a really easy way is to just get their LinkedIn, look at what they're posting. And if you see something that's curious or that piques your interest, send them a message at some point. From there, you can begin to have deeper conversations and keep that relationship moving forward. I would suggest not to be pressured to reach out to them every other day or so, but when it's appropriate, I would say, like if there's, they're posting their job soon, maybe you should reach out a little bit beforehand, say, hey, I want to know more about this program, and just get the conversation, get the ball rolling from there.
Ian, that's a really great point. And it also means that your LinkedIn profile needs to be up and ready, because you really don't know when those opportunities are going to present themselves. So I'm a big fan. And as the Executive Director of Career and Professional Development at the University of Hartford, it's the one thing I'm a real stickler about, is what does your LinkedIn profile look like? And it shouldn't just be a reflection. It shouldn't be the same thing as your resume. People really want to know a lot about you, not just where you went to school and what you've done, but what else you're interested in. And before I get to Carmela and Kim for their input, I use a strategy on LinkedIn. I teach my students 3-2-1. Invite 3 people into your network every week. Maybe it's someone you met at an event, maybe it's someone you saw on a Zoom and they said something really intriguing, or someone you'd like to be connected with. Twice a week, comment on other people's posts, because it's important to your work. Again, because it's something that you're both interested in and you thought what they brought to the table in their post was really pertinent. And create 1 original post a week. So 3-2-1, invite 3 people, comment on 2 people's posts, and then create 1 original content post yourself. It really helps you build content for your own profile, but also helps you to reach out to other people. So that's my tidbit, my 3-2-1 strategy. Kim, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I would say, having a network and leveraging a network, don't be afraid to leverage that network. So many people go out, they network and they have a network, but they don't do anything with it. So if you're at a networking event, most likely we're all there for the same thing, to make those connections. So don't be afraid to leverage your network. Don't be afraid to reach out to those people. And of course, on the other side of it, if someone reaches out to you, networking is a two-way street. So keep that in mind. If someone reaches out to you, you have to be able to be willing to support, but you have to make those connections. You have to connect with those people. Otherwise, networking is really getting you nowhere. It's getting you a whole lot of business cards and not much else. So I know it sounds scary, but go out there and connect with those people, ask them for a coffee, ask them for what you need, engage with them outside of that event. And I think that that's kind of the biggest piece for me, is actually leveraging it.
It's a really good point. And I love how we're all being very optimistic that we're going back to events in person. It's almost as if we're trying to will it to happen. Yes, we're going back to having real events. But we all know that a lot of these events are like this now. So after we hear Carmela's thoughts on this, maybe we'll talk a little bit about virtual events.
So first of all, networking happens every time you're around other people, not just for a specific event. And I would encourage folks to think about it broadly, because whether it's you're going to join a student association, or you're going to join HYPE or NAIA, or whatever the event is, or maybe you're going to do some work for United Way or Habitats for Humanity. Almost always there are people there who you can connect with. And so to me, the big part about converting networking to something meaningful is developing relationships. And if you start with thinking about networking broadly and just think you're out there volunteering, right? You have a chance to connect with someone you have in common already, make relationships. I agree in terms of the follow-up counts. If it's a one-time interaction, it's harder as time goes on. And the last piece I would leave folks with is, on the flip side, I'm a senior leader at a major company, and I do networking, or I'll go to an event for the sole purpose of meeting people. And I'll say, okay, call me. I don't think sometimes people think you really mean it. So if you are there and someone says, oh, give me a call or send me your contact information, take them at face value. It's not like the check is in the mail type of thing. They really do mean it. So
that's some great advice, because we all are out in various capacities in different kinds of ways. Actually, Carmel and I met through a place where I worked, and she was a volunteer, and we have since interacted myriad times in myriad kinds of ways. And I consider her a valued member of my network and someone who has done great work here. And actually, it's through her work at NAIA, the National African American Insurance Association, that we're hoping to bring more people into the industry here in the greater Hartford area. So I highly recommend anyone who's interested in an organization, reach out to Carmela via LinkedIn or the NAIA website. See how I just plugged that?
You did. That was awesome.
A little networking, a little push, a little PR for everybody there. Anyone else, if you want to push an organization that you're affiliated with, please feel free to put that in the chat. That's what these gatherings are for, so we can share with each other and help each other connect and move ourselves and our businesses and our communities forward. Anyone have any specific questions they'd like to ask? I'll start first. I was blown away once when someone walked up to me I never knew, and they're like, "Hi, I'm Mark. What are you passionate about?" And I was a little taken aback, and I was not expecting that. And he said, "I'm really passionate about, was it Pine Derby? Is those cars that they used to make in the Cub Scouts, I think it was." He was like, "I've been doing that when I was little, and then I helped my nephews with it, and now I help my son with it, and it's so much fun." And he was just like exuberant and excited about that, which got me excited about, like, I don't even know how to answer that question. But it was one of the most dynamic questions that brought out this really authentic conversation. And it wasn't just like, where do you work and what do you do? I remember that conversation. I remember him, and we've since stayed in touch. So that was my one thing, and I'll occasionally pull it out. So what are you passionate about? People love that question. Do any of you have other questions that you like to ask to get the networking started, whether it be a professional or other kind of event where you're looking to get to know people? Don't all answer at once. I also like to ask, so what brings you here today? And sometimes it's a matter of just, it's been a long week, and I knew some friends of mine were going to be here, and it's really looking forward to seeing them, or I'm a part of this organization.
I would say I find that folks like to talk about where they're from. And so it's generally a good starter, and it's easy to follow up. One of the things is to just be, if you're naturally curious about folks and naturally curious about what has brought them to wherever they are, and that's in their station, then it's the initial question of, where are you from and how do we connect? And then follow-up questions from there. Works for me. It's low key.
That's nice.
Yes. I don't know if I can pull off, to be honest, hey, what's your passion?
I haven't done, I was totally mesmerized by it, and I've only used it a couple of times, but that one had an impact on me because it was just so out of the norm. And I think that's refreshing sometimes. Anyone else have one you want to throw in?
To
add?
To what Carmel talked about a little bit too, like you have to kind of play to your style too. Like I'm pretty curious about what people are into and getting to know them as a human being, not only as their, profession. So sometimes I'll play this little game and I'll see how long I can go without even bringing up what we do for work. So you get to know this person so well, you get to know their background, you get to know what they're passionate about, you get to know their hobbies and their interests. And I had one guy refer business to me because he knew I liked hockey. He didn't even know what I do for work. He was like, "Oh, I met this guy, he's a hockey player. I think you guys would get along." And I was like, and then he was a realtor and we ended up doing business together. And it was, it's just stuff like that just happens when you get to know human beings instead of their identity through work. So that's what I would challenge you guys to do that.
I like that, being really other-centric for a while so you can extract as much information and detail as you can from that. It's a great one. I like that a lot. Kim, anything happen at Hype events in particular that you see as great networking strategies? I know you host really cool events that offer a lot of interaction and engagement.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing to make networking easier is if you're networking at something that's already cool, you've got a purpose for being there and everyone's there for a reason. They're either sharing an experience or, doing something fun together. So that's an automatic icebreaker. But I think, one of the best things that you could do in those situations is ask follow-up questions. And Carmela made a great point. Networking is really just getting to know somebody. So when you kind of strip away that scary title, it's really just getting to know somebody, which is, kind of how we make friends, how we meet our coworkers. If you started a new job, how do you get to know people? How do you get the lay of the land? You ask questions, you engage. And at the core, that's really what networking is. So I, have run many a registration table, and I was a former librarian, so I can play 20 questions all day. But it really just ask a lot of questions. Where are you from? What is this? What is that? The what do you do is only so far. And that's kind of a closed question. If you ask a lot of open-ended questions, you get to know people on a much deeper level. And through my work with Hype, I'm so lucky to have such a diverse network of people that, are in my network that have become colleagues and friends and beyond, and from all different backgrounds, people that I don't know if I ever would have been able to meet if we hadn't had these shared experiences together. So definitely say yes. I know it's hard, but everyone else is saying yes too. So seek out those unique opportunities. I will use this as an opportunity to plug Hype, which is a young professionals networking group, but we do a lot of really cool stuff in the community. If you're a little more outside of the central Hartford region, Dan, I'll plug yours too. Spark is another great one. There's a plethora of YP groups throughout the state that Dan and we all work together to support one another. So find that. That's going to be the easiest way. It's going to be people who are, younger like you, who are looking for similar experiences, and it's going to take some of the scary away.
Hype's a great organization. I know many of our students take advantage of all of your cool events and engagement opportunities. I also want to give a plug generally to all kinds of membership associations and societies. If you are interested in them, they likely have a young professionals or student component that you can get involved in. All that information is easily found on LinkedIn or on websites, you name it. And associations and societies are constantly looking to grow their membership and to understand younger current workforce interests and trajectories and have them on board. So that's another great place for you to begin building a network and perhaps even becoming more engaged in those organizations, which helps you gain other competencies that complement your skill set. Anyone want to share one of the more unlikely places where you've built network? I was hushed by my family for networking at church once, but not during the service, but they were like, should you really be doing that here? I'm like, yeah, I think I should be. So it was afterwards, it was a fellowship. It seemed to make sense, but I can't really turn that off. Like I said, it's part of my DNA. Grocery store line as well. Everywhere and anywhere. Anyone have any other ideas of where you can build network?
Yeah, I agree with you. I've gotten in trouble for that before too. Sometimes you just can't help but connecting. An opportunity comes up and you want to help someone. You're trying to help. It doesn't matter when and where it is. But yeah, an old colleague of my dad's used to say that if you can't talk to someone in the Stop and Shop line, then you might not be in the right profession. So that's just part of our DNA, part of the job. And depending on your role, I agree with you. It can be in the craziest places. So I don't have a specific example, but I've been there too.
And it's not always about something that you need or your organization needs. Sometimes it's about facilitating network among others. And that, I think, then identifies you as someone who wants others to be successful and connect. That 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. And so when you help others make connection, when you seek a connection, they're more inclined to then come back and be like, well, of course, happy to make an introduction. Oh, you don't know Ian Thomas? I went to school with Ian Thomas. I'll introduce him to you, whether that be on LinkedIn or via an email or phone call or Zoom or however that works. So networking isn't just about, moving yourself up and out into an industry. It's also the give and take of it all. And I think that's where a lot of the magic happens, when you open yourself up to helping others. And that's why the whole idea of working in community, volunteering, some of my best and most robust and probably meaningful connections in my network come from my work working with philanthropic organizations, whether that was a one-day endeavor or somewhere I'm on the board. So I highly recommend that people follow your passions in community as a way to build your network. How many of you on the panel happen to be on boards or involved with organizations? I know Carmela's with NAIA. How many of you also spend time and energy working on other places? It is, I think it's a great way to build that. And I think many of us are seeking younger members for those organizations. So if you have any interest, it doesn't mean you're gonna have to jump on a board immediately, but as a young professional or a college student, sometimes just joining a committee of an organization that you are interested in helps you get to know what they do, how they operate, where you might see yourself fitting in. So it's a bit of a dual track there, building network, but also building skills and getting insight into an organization issue that you are passionate about.
I would echo that. Just one thing as folks are looking out there, often it will say emerging leaders. So if you see emerging leaders and you are in college or early career professional, emerging leaders means you.
Thank you for breaking the code on that one. I'm not sure I ever would have identified myself as an emerging leader when I was in college, but good to know. I'm sure Ian was an emerging leader and still is an emerging leader for sure. I know we only have a few minutes left. I'm just going to check and see if we have anything in the chat. Nothing. With that, I just want to see if anyone has any closing comments about how you feel about networking and what advice you might offer to those who are watching.
So Brooke, I would just say, in the beginning, I said I hated networking and you love networking, but I very much like you will talk to anyone, anywhere. Sorry, guys, technical difficulties. We're back in the office and my light sensor is going off. But I've networked in the wackiest, weirdest places. Just talking to people. I was at a concert and I was talking to myself, to be perfectly honest with you, and someone overheard me and came over and engaged with me. And my husband was like, why are you bothering these people? Like, stop, And I ended up talking to the guy, and he was the lead singer of the band that we were there to go see. It was a band that my husband loved. And I said, oh, that's the guy I was talking to. He's going to help us with our mortgage. And he was just mind blown. Like, how did you go from, I left you for 5 minutes. How did this happen? Yes. And I think it's, networking can happen in the strangest places. I didn't have a business card on me. I wasn't wearing my blazer and, my cute little flats. Like, it was an evening. I was off duty, but I was still able to make those connections. So I think, to Ian's point, like, if you know your pitch and kind of know your brand, I know that's so hokey, but I always know what my brand is with Hype and with the work that I do. So if someone's willing to engage with me around that at any time, I'm ready to do so. So if you're looking for a job, if that's your networking purpose right now, If you're in the line at the grocery store and you overhear someone talking about coupons or whatever, and the conversation evolves and you think that they might be able to help you get a job, it's perfectly okay to engage with them. Networking doesn't just have to happen in four walls with weird elevator music and little cube cheese that you're trying not to drop. It doesn't have to happen that way. And now that we're in a virtual world, that's really kind of blown everything open for us. So as much as it makes it weird, it also creates more opportunities. So I would suggest lean into that. It is a little bit awkward, but it's awkward for everybody. At least it can be awkward from, the neck up instead of, all the way. So that's what I would say is know your brand, network wherever you can be, get involved in everything you can, even if you're not quite ready for it yet, because there could be an experience that comes up that interests you, and then you can take advantage of it.
It's some great advice.
I wanted to touch briefly, sorry if I cut you off there, Ian, I'll keep it short. We didn't really touch on the virtual versus in-person and how there are so many virtual opportunities now. I wanted to speak to what Kim was just saying, that you can definitely start with a shotgun approach and really just test the market and see what's out there, and then really just narrow your scope down and find what really works with your vibe. There are some virtual events that are just a happy hour that are happening every week, and you just have to be able to know where to look for them. So there's different ways to network virtually. There's dedicated industry groups for young insurance professionals or for whatever field that you're in. There's community groups that are meeting online. I know that we do a Spark speed networking that's in the mornings on Thursday mornings, and it's really just a great opportunity to get in front of a lot of new people. And that if that's what you're looking for, there's things out there for you to do if you're not comfortable meeting in person yet. It is a little safer when it's just whatever you said, the chest up or the neck up. It's a little bit safer behind the screen.
That's a great point, because as much as I do miss the cube cheese, I can attend more events online in a single week than I could have accommodated before. So that is one benefit. I can see more people in less time, and then quickly follow up on LinkedIn. I don't have to hold the card, remember a name or something. It's really easy then to connect with them. So I would say that those are all great advantages. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, Dan.
Echo the component around learning to network virtually. We'll all go back into the office at some point, and Kim's already there, Dan's already there, but I think the communication in the virtual world is here to stay, particularly as more people are working remote and things along those lines. So I think if that's a skill that you can build and put some effort into it and develop over time, it's one that will serve you well. And the good news is we're all learning it. And the last piece I would say is that this is a good time to do virtual networking because people want to connect and they just want to have some conversations. So I was just on something that was a Cozy Mill thing where it's mixology, and it was fun. We weren't talking work. We were learning to make some drinks and having a good time. So take advantage.
That's a really good thought, because not everybody is going to be back in the office all the time. And like you said, it's this kind of work is here to stay. I always am thoughtful about when I reach out to someone, would you like to meet via Zoom? You want to have a phone conversation? You want to meet in person? So when you're reaching out to build your network, perhaps after a LinkedIn connection or something, it's always nice to be able to be accommodating to whatever that person's networking and meeting preferences are. And now we have more of them. Ian, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, a piece of advice that I would give to students going through college right now is, if you're nervous about networking, is to start with your professors. Find a class that you're intrinsically inclined towards, and just start talking to your professor about different opportunities that you can do, extra projects on the side. And then from there, you're just going to see your network or your relationship with that professor really start to blossom. And in my personal experience, I found that after I start to connect a little bit with my professors, they start to link me towards different organizations I can join, different networking events that I can go to, and even sending me different job applications and connections that I can reach out to. It's a great resource, and I would honestly take full advantage if you can.
Our professors here at the University of Hartford have phenomenal industry connections. And so does our alumni network. Don't forget to leverage your fellow classmates or the classmates that came, a generation ahead of you. They are all in hiring positions. They all want to network. They all work at places that continue to hire and are growing. So your university or college alumni organization is a great place to go as well. We've hit 2:00, and I want to thank everybody who joined us. Thank you to the panelists. Lady, thank you so much for allowing us to talk about networking today.
Thank you so much for such an engaging conversation. And this concludes the Connecticut Insurance Department's 2021 Next Gen Career Academy. I'd like to thank each and every single one of our moderators and panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your career paths, your insights, and your advice with our audience. For everyone at home, make sure to bookmark the NextGen webpage to stay up to date on upcoming relevant events. And again, thanks everyone for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
Na